Okay, guys, good evening and welcome to today's Health and Safety Interactive Workshop under the platform of Safeoclock. So I'm so happy to welcome us again. And as usual, we'll start with a brief presentation about the topic of the day. So after the presentation, we'll give room for everyone to share their experience and we'll learn from each other. So that is how we operate in this platform. It's an opportunity for us to learn from each other and try to learn from each other and correct ourselves where possible. So this platform is not where one person knows it all or one person is required to talk all the time. So it's just an avenue for us to learn from each other. So just like we do every week, we'll select a particular topic to discuss for that week. So this week, we are discussing workplace emergency evacuation procedure. So without wasting much time, I'll start with a brief presentation. And I know we have professionals in the house. So after my brief presentation, the floor will be open for everyone to share their view, share their experience, and where necessary, ask questions for directions and for clarifications. So let us start from emergency procedure. What do we mean by emergency procedure? Or what do we mean by emergency evacuation procedure? So by emergency evacuation procedure simply means those process that we have put in place to ensure that we protect lives and give life a priority in the event of emergency. So when an emergency happens in the workplace, evacuating people becomes the priority, becomes the first line of action before thinking about protecting the equipment or protecting the assets or company buildings. But human life, giving human life the priority that it deserves is what happens in the event of emergency. So having an emergency evacuation procedure stipulates those processes or those approaches that the employer or the workplace puts in place to ensure that they give priority to life, to ensure that they keep the employees and they keep the people alive in the event of emergency. So that is what we refer to as emergency evacuation procedure. So you don't wait for an emergency to happen or for the emergency to occur before we start putting these procedures in place. So it's a systematic process. It's a documented process as well, in as much as it's documented, it's written down and kept for future use. So it's not something that you know when the emergency will happen, but you keep yourself abreast, keep yourself ready in preparation for the emergency when it will happen. So the aim or the major reason why emergency evacuation procedure is put in place is to ensure that we give life a priority in the event of emergency so that we protect every member of that workplace and ensure that they are rescued at a very appropriate time. So that is the main reason or the main aim for emergency evacuation procedure. Okay, so the first type of emergency we'll look at is fire emergency. So when fire occurs or when fire happens, the first approach or the first people to give priority in the evacuation are the employees before you start thinking of the assets or how to extinguish the fire or how to put out the fire. But the employees is given priority and they are rescued at appropriate time. Now, in the case of emergency, or in the case of fire emergency, your emergency evacuation procedure should have stipulated the actions that you are required to take. And these actions should be communicated to every member of that workplace or every employee in that workplace. They should be familiar with the fire emergency evacuation procedure. They should know where the assembly point is located. They should be aware of the emergency evacuation route, and they should also know the emergency contact numbers. Who are the people to be communicated in the event of emergency, and what are the necessary actions that should be taken when fire emergency happens. Okay, so let's look at some steps that should be taken to develop a proper emergency evacuation policy or procedure. Okay, for every workplace, there are different approaches that could apply because different workplaces are unique. All the workplaces are unique based on their location, based on the type of activities going on, based on the size also, and also based on the type of equipment or the processes that are being used in that workplace. So that is why emergency evacuation procedure is unique. It's uniquely developed for that workplace. So some people copy these documents, like you can see something online and you copy it, but it should be uniquely edited and it should be developed based on that specific workplace. And it doesn't end there. After developing the emergency evacuation procedure, it shouldn't end there. It should be regularly updated because as the workplace keeps evolving, as the activities keep developing, as there is changes in the workplace, so is the emergency evacuation procedure should be developing. For instance, the location of an assembly point might change at different times, depending on the activities going on and depending on the safety of that place. So if the assembly point has changed location, or if the emergency evacuation route has been changed, then emergency evacuation procedure and your policy should be updated as well. Okay, so these are the simple steps that are necessary to ensure that the proper emergency evacuation procedure is developed. The first one is to determine the conditions under which the evacuation will be necessary. So it should be something that everyone will agree on. The management team will agree on the necessary conditions that will warrant evacuation of the workers. Because it's not in every situation that you need to evacuate the workers. So you need to define it. It should be defined within the workplace and within the management horizon, which of the situations or which of the events will warrant evacuation of the workplace. So that is the first step. When this has been determined and has been settled, the next one is to establish a clear chain of command. Clear chain of command simply means who will be responsible in the event of emergency, who will be giving the orders, who will be giving the instructions, because in the event of emergency, if this chain of command is not clearly specified, you see different people giving different instructions from left and right. This person will say go left, this person will say go right, this person will say take your left, this person will say take your right. So there will be confusions, there will be chaos in the workplace. So that is why clear chain of command should be clearly established so that you know who you take instruction from. You know who is the incident manager. You know who will be the incident commander. So the incident commander or the incident director or the emergency response team you know who are there and who to take instructions and advice from. So this is why the clear chain of command is necessarily should be established if that emergency evacuation procedure would be effective. Then the next one is to establish specific evacuation procedures. Specific in the sense that it has to align with the organizational policies and procedures. It has to also align with the company activities, and it has to also align with the company's rules and regulations. So these specific evacuation procedures should be properly stipulated in that document, in the sense that, for instance, if it's a multi-story building, the specific evacuation process should be stating which of the floors should be evacuated first and which of the floors comes second. So this type of specific instructions should be clearly established so that there will be no confusion during that emergency. So the next line of action that is required is to establish a system for accounting for personnel. So in the sense that when an emergency happens, you see that people will start running helter-skelter. So there should be a proper mechanism in place to account for people who has been rescued, who is trapped in the disaster area or the incident area, and who is responsible for rescuing these people. So this system for accounting for the personnel should be properly stipulated and should be properly documented so that everybody knows that in the case of emergency, this is what should be done. For instance, during a confined space activity, you see we have a system of clock in and clock out. So this is a typical example of how you can be able to account for the personnel inside that workplace, so that if everybody's card is already clocked out, so you are sure that nobody is trapped inside that workplace or inside the emergency area. So the next step is to establish the procedures for assisting people with disabilities. So you believe with me that in the event of emergency, people become selfish. People take care of themselves first. So your emergency evacuation procedure should have lines, should have established procedures to take care of these people that cannot help themselves. How do we take care of the disabled people? How do we take care of people that cannot see or people that cannot walk? How do you respond to them in the event of emergency? So your evacuation procedure should capture these details so that when that emergency happens, we know that this should be done first. And after this is done, the next thing should be done is this. So the next thing to do is to designate personnel who will shut down critical operations. So we always tell our employees or our workers that in the event of emergency that they should leave whatever they are doing and evacuate to the nearest assembly point. So when these equipment or when these tools and all these things are left in operation and people have been evacuated, so there should be designated people who will take care of this equipment, ensure that they are properly stopped and they are properly disabled in operation. So this is one way to ensure that even after the emergency, that the workplace still remains safe. Now, another important thing to be established is evacuation routes and exits. Because when it's an emergency, people tend to take different directions, and people tend to take different actions that could worsen the emergency situation. So establishing an evacuation route or evacuation exit is one of the critical components of emergency evacuation procedure. so that people know exactly where to follow, exactly the direction to take in the event of emergency, so that people would not go to the where the emergency itself is even happening while trying to be safe. So the evacuation route and the emergency exit should be clearly identified, should be marked, and there should be proper signs and signages directing people on where to go, where the direction to follow, and what not to do. For instance, you see in the lift, you see the signages saying do not use lift in the event of emergency. So this type of signages should be properly posted in our workplaces to ensure that in the event of emergency, people do not follow the wrong direction. Now, the next thing that we should establish in our emergency evacuation procedure is the emergency exit route. And how wide is it? Some of the emergency exits are too narrow that in the event of emergency, even some people that are large enough in size cannot pass through that area. So we should be able to determine the best route to follow, because during that emergency, you see that people will not be thinking straight. So we should make it very easy for them to identify the right route to follow and ensure that the routes are unobstructed at all time. There should be no additional hazard in any of that route, because in the event of emergency, people are eager to evacuate. So they will not look properly. There should be no trips hazards. There should be no trailing cables on those routes. So continuous and regular inspection of our emergency evacuation routes should be encouraged to ensure that in the event of emergency, people do not get more injured while trying to evacuate. Even it would have even been better to stay put in that instance. Okay, so the next important point to establish is the assembly point. So this assembly point should be established, communicated to everyone in the site or in the workplace to ensure that they know where to go in the event of emergency. Because when emergency happens, people are only looking for safe areas. So our assembly points should be located at safe locations. It should be away from the building. In case it's a building collapse, it should be located in a place that is safe, away from the building or away from the hazard that is happening at that moment. So assembly points should be properly identified, marked with proper signage, directional arrows directing people to the assembly point. And at the assembly point itself, it should not be obstructed with anything. Assembly point should not be a material storage area where people keep their materials, or a car park area where people are parking their vehicles. And so it should be left clear so that in the event of emergency, people can assemble at that location without any obstruction. Now, we should have, in our emergency evacuation procedure, we should have, one, a designated area as the assembly point. Two, there should be a head count system to be in place to determine how many people that has been evacuated safely. So the next one is we should establish a method of counting for non-employees. For instance, when you come to the work in at the day, you have the details of your employees. Maybe a supervisor have the details of people working under him. But what happens to the visitors? what happens to the customers, and what happens to the clients who their records might not be with you. So we should have a system in place to account for non-employees, or to take a good record of people that are not full-time employees, so that in the event of emergency, we should be sure of how many people are in that workplace and how many people have been evacuated safely. Now, the next thing is we should establish a procedure to ensure that evacuation is expanded in the case of emergency. What this simply means is that if there are people that got injured during that emergency, we are not going to end the evacuation just at the assembly point. So we should have a procedure in place to ensure that we take it further. If some people need to go to the hospital, if some people need to be taken to a home, if some people need to be taken to the first aid room, so we should have a procedure or a plan in place to take care of people after evacuation, people that need that are in those needs, especially medical related needs, or people that should be taken care of, people that are psychologically traumatized. So we should have a system in place to take care of people after they have been evacuated. So you don't just evacuate people, keep them in the assembly point without taking care of their further needs. Some people will get traumatized, some people will get scared. So there should be a procedure in place also to ensure that we take care of the people after they have been evacuated from the emergency situation. Now, the next part is very important: training. The role of training in emergency evacuation procedure cannot be overemphasized. People should be trained. They should be aware of their roles, because in the event of emergency, everybody has their own roles and responsibilities to undertake. So nobody is an island in the event of emergency. So at that emergency time, people should be aware of where to go. They should be aware of the direction to follow. They should be aware of the emergency contact numbers. They should be aware of the equipment evacuation procedure. So we should communicate to the people, and this emergency evacuation procedure should be part of the health and safety induction program or induction training, so that from the beginning, when the person comes to the workplace, he's already getting familiar with the what is required of him to do in the event of emergency. So training and the effects of training cannot be overemphasized. And this training does not end in just verbal training or classroom training. We should take it further to practical trainings, like drills, conducting fire drills, conducting emergency evacuation drills. So this will help the employees get conversant with the emergency evacuation procedures of your workplace, so that in the event of emergency, you might have less work to do, because everyone understands what to do and everyone is determined to do the right thing. So that is why training and communicating your emergency evacuation procedure to the employees is very, very important. So during the safety induction, we should use our emergency evacuation plan to let the workers know this is where you are. You are here at this point, and for you to get to the assembly point, you can take this direction, go to this direction, and after so number of meters, you should be able to reach the assembly point. So this fire evacuation plan, you will find out if you go to buildings or you go to the sites or locations, you will see fire emergency evacuation plan posted at different locations, helping you to identify where you are and helping you to figure out the next place to go or the right direction to follow. So we should develop a proper and updated fire evacuation plan. Because in some workplaces, what happens is that when you have developed an evacuation plan, you leave it there. You don't update it. As the sites keep changing, as the emergency evacuation routes keep changing, as they keep closing some accesses and opening new ones, we don't update our fire evacuation plan. So it becomes outdated and it becomes also risky because people in the event of emergency will look at your evacuation plan and take the wrong direction, and they will maybe you will end up in an excavation. So because your fire evacuation plan is not updated. So this should be updated and ensure that the updates are also communicated to the people. So, like I said before, our training and our communication should not end in theories. So we should take it further by ensuring that we'll conduct regular evacuation drills so that people will get used to evacuation. People will get used to the emergency evacuation procedure. So that when they panic maybe if you do the drill in the first instance, there will be some panics, there will be some unpleasant reactions, people will get it wrong. But if these drills are carried out on regular basis and repeatedly, you find out that people start getting used to the actions of them to take in the event of emergency. So drills are a very effective way of practicing emergency evacuation procedure and the plans of the workplace to ensure that everyone gets conversant with the procedure and is ready to apply it in the event of emergency. Okay, so this is where my presentation ends. So that I will leave room and time all of us to contribute and share our experience and also ask questions where necessary. All right, thank you guys. The floor is open now for contributions, questions, and sharing of experience. Can raise up your hand if you want to talk, then I'll mute you. Okay, EPE, are you raising your hand or you are doing thumbs up?
Yes.
All
Hi,
right.
good evening.
Good evening. All right.
Yeah, I want to ask, in the area of where you have a patient and it's in the emergency section and the fire and there was a fire outbreak. For example, it's an inpatient clinic, okay? And there are a lot of patients who are on emergency, for example, life support. And when these fire outbreaks happen, what will be the next thing? For some people who can walk and run, they can run. So for the ones who are on emergency section, what can they do and how can they be helped?
Okay. That's a great question. So the question anyone who wants to contribute will also contribute. But let me answer to the best of my knowledge. Now, emergency evacuation procedure is unique for every workplace and every industry. So now you are talking about medical industry or hospital. So the emergency evacuation procedure must have stipulated the categories or the sequence of help. So in that procedure, it must have stated the first people to evacuate. Maybe the first people to evacuate will be those who are healthy, those who can run. Then the second set of people could be people who are alert, who are conscious, and could be wheeled out. Then maybe the last set of the people that will be evacuated are people who are unconscious, who cannot walk, and who cannot help themselves. So this is what the management of that organization comes and puts down as their own procedure. So it's not a one material fits all. It's not something that whatever we do here is what this other organization will do. So no, every organization has the right or the freedom to stipulate how they carry out their own emergency evacuation. So depending on the type of activity and the type of people that they are having in that workplace. So this is my response. It depends on how the organization have structured it in their procedure. So that is how it will be carried out.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Francis.
Yeah, I think emergency evacuation procedure as per se is a very broad topic, and its handler process require a very diligent and committed team as per different organization structure. You said a lot, and all you said were very relevant to the discussed topic today. I think I know emergency evacuation response process is break into different various category where we have man overboard, which involve the water operation. We have the fire rescue, which involve the fire emergency process. And we also have rescue from height, which also involve maybe those who are walking at height in the case of emergency that may occur while they are walking. And we have medical emergency process, which maybe involve the medical team who will respond in this case. Now, I will tailor it down to my own yard practice, where we have these various breakdown of emergency response process, and we have emergency response coordinator who is in charge of emergency response in the yard, separately from the medical itself, because this is purely managed by the medical team and the doctor with the support of trained first aiders if there are cases of medical emergency. Then the EROT coordinator, for effective managing the team in readiness for any eventuality of any of these medical emergency evacuation process, he has what we call a plan where he reviews twice meeting with the team. And under this team, we have a man overboard team leader who is solely responsible for emergency that may arise from man overboard. And just like because we're into fabrication, we also have Zodiac and all that we can deploy on the water, on the jetty, in case there is a man overboard situation. Now, we have emergency response team leader who manage this man overboard situation. He works under the ERT coordinator. And we also have the fire evacuation team leader. Those ones are there should in case there is any fire outbreak. Then we also have the rescue emergency response team leader, who are also all part of the emergency team leaders. They are all under the EROT, who oversees these team guys and their members. Then in the board, in our site, we have a bulletin board where we display each of these categories, their photographs, their mobile numbers. And in the code, there is one column we created. If you're on vacation, they will put red on your tag. That red means that this person is not available, is on vacation, so that in case there is need to contact any of these persons according to the emergency detail, according to the emergency details and their unit, there is no need for you calling somebody who is at home or rather trying to reach them. So you have to call directly any of these guys. Then we have the site general emergency response number, medical and fire, displays on all our notice board, which everyone, we always regularly sound this. Some persons, in fact, we even encourage them to have this in their mobile phone so that you can call that number directly. Is connected on a fire. This number is the mobile number is under the control of the EROT coordinator, while that of a medical emergency, you are calling directly to the clinic. So this is how, and on weekly basis or on annual basis, accordingly, if there is any change in top management, because I think the GM and the yard operation manager, some of them are in the contact list of the emergency response team, because you must also inform them. So this is how in our yard we manage our own emergency response system. Just as you said, we have a layout of the yard as well, trying to ensure that the ERT coordinator all the time continue to check to see if there are any obstruction or that can obstruct any of the event in case it happened. So, and we also have another team leader who also manage the rescue guys in case there is eventuality of, and this one, I think the scaffold supervisor is the team leader of this one, because it involves height. So you cannot just use anybody to manage this process if there is a case of fall from height, and which involve maybe a suspension, that there will be need to use maybe the harness bed and all that before you can rescue someone from height. So I believe, just as you say, each company has their own safe way to manage emergency evacuation process. Depends on the event process, so that seamlessly during the emergency evacuation, there will not be creating another emergency again, because if poorly handled, there could be during emergency another emergency again, just like the question this last person just asked now. It's very simple. In cases like this, and I believe you must give priority to such persons who are already finding themselves in a difficult way to work before others. But you know, emergency is emergency. Some persons will struggle to have their way first without considering even such kind of persons in the work environment, or rather in the hospital, or depends on the place the emergency itself is taking place. So I believe what you just said from your end, they are all very important. The process is the same thing, which I believe, but the little difference could just be applied due to operational reasons or different procedures of different companies. So that I can contribute from my end.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Francis, as always, for sharing with us the emergency process in the yard. For some of us who have not been opportune to work in the yard, it's an avenue for us to learn how you guys operate there. So thank you for sharing that wonderful experience with us. The floor is open. We have few minutes to round up.
Yes, good evening all. I want to contribute in my own understanding. First, my name is Ransom, and this is my first time of joining this platform.
Yeah,
and listening to Mr. Johnson speaking, this has been very informative. Like it's refreshing my brain. So, in answering the question that was asked, in emergency evacuation procedure, there's a part that describe about responsibilities, and in that part they have to give everybody responsibilities, so people know who to call, how to go about when there's an emergency, who will call police, who will call emergency team, how to evacuate, even the fire wardens, because just like you said, every workplace has its own emergency procedure depending on the workplace. So now, when you have these people with disability, I believe during induction, this is part of induction. This is part of things you tell them during induction. See what to do in case of emergency. This is the route to follow. This is the button to press. This is because there are so many types of disabilities. Some people, they don't hear, some they don't see, some they use a wheelchair. So during induction process, we tell them during induction process. And again, during emergency mock drills, we make sure we involve them. We involve them during emergency mock drills, so they know, to anticipate on a real scenario, for them to know what to do in a case of actual emergency. Okay, so these are how we evacuate people with disability in case of emergency. So this is a little way I will contribute to the question that was asked. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ransom. We welcome you to our team. We meet here every Thursday by 6 p.m. and we discuss different topics selected for the week. David, it's your turn. You can go ahead, unmute and go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation today on this subject. And also to Mr. Francis, your contribution was an excellent one. The procedure regarding the emergency evacuation you shared with us, I think that has been practiced in several organizations that I've worked with. However, in my current place of work, I think there's a little difference in terms of the emergency setup. But just like you said, depends on organizations and the operation. But before I dive into our own emergency structure here, I would want to also add one or two things to the question that was asked earlier on. I could remember when the presenter was making the presentation, it gave us a breakdown of components of how the emergency evacuation plan looks like. Now, when developing the emergency evacuation plan, one of the critical questions we ask ourselves is trying to identify, looking at our operations, our activity, and trying to identify what are the possible events that could, occur. What are the types of emergency situation that could, really occur. So it varies based on industries, right? So like she asked, in the medical or healthcare sector. However, responsibilities for individuals has been spelled out, and of course they have wordings to help the vulnerable people. So when developing the project, they also consider vulnerable people. So you look at worst case scenario, just like you have brought up these questions now. So if you happen to work in the healthcare, these are possible scenarios, something that could come up. So it's something they now have to look at. How can they remedy this, right? So if they draft the procedure on how to do so, they have to simulate it. They have to conduct a drill to check their readiness, to check their response, the response, time, of the vulnerable people and the disabled people, and so on and so forth. So that is how to salvage such situation. You just look at your operations. What are the possible emergency situation that could happen? Most times, and those are the emergency types that you embed in your procedure. So, and when you embed them in your procedure, you want to be conducting, drills to check your readiness for each of these types of events. So most times, most people, their procedure, they look at, like Francis has said, he had mentioned so many across the industry: man overboard, electrocution, even a natural disaster like flood. It depends on your operation: fire, emergency, evacuation, rescue from confined space, rescue from height. That being said, now coming to my current place of work is a very it's a mega project, where we have, I think on the average at the moment, over 25,000 workers, right? So the HSC department is very big, but under the HSC department, we have the ERP setup. We also have the medical clinic, the ISOs, we call them ISOs. They are independent. It's a unit. They stand on their own. It's just like they have the medical, the clinic facility. So the doctors are there, the occupational therapists are there, the paramedics, right? They are also there. And we have the EROT. The EROT comprises of, they are trained. They've given them various training, like rope access, rescue from the confined space, rescue from heights. They have all of this training and certified by the third party. So in that team comprises so many, both the fire rescue team, all of them, they are there. Now, whenever there is an emergency situation, irrespective of the type of emergency, we have the SOC. That SOC, we call the person Security Operational Center. Security Operational Center. So every first responder, every first discover, anybody that is there, the moment an incident occur, is bound to and expected to call the SOC, either through the mobile phone or through the radio, through the channel. You must call. And during the induction process on the project, we have a sticker. We have a sticker. On that sticker, they've already put the number of the SOC, the Security Operational Center. They've already put the number there. So every worker has this number on their helmet, pasted on their helmet. It's boldly written there. And secondly, we also reflect this number on the ID badge that is issued to every new worker on the project. So you have that number on your ID badge and you have it on your helmet. So in case of any incident around you, you are expected to immediately call the SOC or report to your supervisor or safety close to you. Then they can use their radio to make the call or their mobile phone to make the call. So that's how we report to the SOC. All consigns, incidents are channeled to the SOC. Just like you mentioned, clear chain of command, right? So this is our clear chain of command. We direct everything to the SOC. So the SOC will now be the one to initiate the emergency procedure, the emergency process. So immediately, if it's a medical related case, it's something that has to do, immediately it will activate the ambulance. It will activate the emergency team, and it will share the location based on the information the responder, the first responder has given to her, she will just communicate it to the ERT team on the radio, and we'll all be hearing. And once there is a situation like that, only the ERT team are allowed. No other person is expected to engage the radio. So she will inform them. The moment she alerts and activates the ambulance will move straight to the place. In fact, I give kudos to our ERT team because they always exceed the response time. No matter where you are in that big site, they will get there and they will always meet up with the time, their response time. I think the response time is rather 10 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes or so. But I've never seen a time where they even exceed 4 minutes. They move at once. So they will get the victim or the IP and immediately mobilize the IP to the clinic. No matter the situation, whether it's a work-related incident or non-work-related incident, they will mobilize the victim and move him over to the clinic. So in the clinic there, they will administer, they will examine the victim, but sometimes it depends. The paramedic may administer, first aid or AED to the victim, before they would transfer the victim to the ambulance, to the roller, stretcher, into the ambulance. And of course, it doesn't take them 2 minutes. They've gotten to the clinic, to the site clinic. There, the doctors are all there. They will attend to this person. If they are to do, the only thing they don't do on the site clinic is the X-ray. So it depends on the type of incident. So only what they don't do there is the X-ray. So if it's something they need to refer the victim to any of the retainership hospital outside the project site, of course, is done. And part of our procedure is that no company is allowed to evacuate their worker, or IP out of the project site. Any IP or victim that must be mobilized out of the site must be through the clinic. The clinic first must attend to that IP. IP simply means the involved person or injured person. They will attend to the person, know the situation. Then if it's something that is beyond them, they cannot handle, that is only when they escalate and give a recommendation for the person to go. And that is where we also determine how to classify whatever incident that has happened. That is where from the doctor, whatever it is, we can classify. Other than maybe property damage, which on the site we can say, oh, that has nothing to do with the site clinic. So in conclusion, now looking at the medical situation, like I said, I try to brainstorm to look at what possible, top events, what possible emergency event that can happen. Now you've painted out this scenario, right? So it's now up to your emergency response team to look at what's the possible mitigation, they can put, modalities they can put in place. Sometimes it may even involve buying some rescue equipment, putting some things in place, based on technology and all of that. And there are also some other solutions, suggestions they can give that may not warrant even acquiring more equipment for your organization. So this is how it works, right? This is how it works. And whatever procedure that is decided must be enshrined in your emergency procedure within your organization. Thank you very much. This is my contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. David, for that wonderful contribution. One interesting thing about our experiences is when I listen to these experiences, I begin to imagine what exactly is going on in those workplaces. And it gives you like an idea of what is going on there, even though you have not been there. So I could just imagine a workplace having over 25,000 workers. I could just imagine how big and how massive it is. So kudos to you guys for managing the emergencies very well. and taking a very short time to manage the emergencies. So we are all learning from each other, and thank you for that wonderful contribution and for sharing your experience. All right, our time is far spent, but if somebody wants to talk, we can just take one more person before we close for the day. Okay, in the absence of that, we'll call it a day. And thank you all for joining today's workshop. And we meet here every Thursday by 6 p.m. Using the same link, and we'll discuss different topics. So next week, Thursday, we'll select another topic to discuss. I have my WhatsApp number shared here. So if you require CPD certificate for attendance, just send me a message. And if you want me to add you to my broadcast list so that you get updates prior to the week's workshop, just send me a message. I'll add you to my broadcast list. So thank you guys for joining today, and I appreciate your time and your contributions. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Thank you, Sumesh. Thank you, Pascal, Ransom, Oluwase. Thank you very much. Oppo, next time you change your name so that I will not call you Oppo again. All right, guys.
Welcome, welcome, Ransom guy. You're welcome to this great platform. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Andrew, you'll be silent there. Welcome.